I was finding proof to free my mom.
Sirens screamed through the cold morning air, painting the cracked apartment walls in flashes of red and blue. 10-year-old Malik pressed his face to the broken window pane, his breath fogging the glass. Outside, 2 officers shoved his mother, Angela, toward a police car. Her uniform still smelled of grease and dish soap from the night shift she had just finished. "Tell them I didn't do it, baby," she cried, her voice breaking through the noise. Malik's heart pounded. "Mom!" he shouted, but the word dissolved under the sound of slamming car doors. The neighbors stood in silence, robes pulled tight, whispering behind curtains. No one came forward. No one defended her. Angela's eyes found his for one last moment through the tinted window before the car pulled away. Malik saw fear in them. Fear and something worse. Helplessness. The hallway outside their apartment smelled of old paint and stale air. 2 social workers stood waiting, clipboards in hand. "You'll come with us for now, Malik," one said softly. He didn't answer. His fingers tightened around his backpack, the same one his mother had given him on his birthday. Inside it was a folded card that read, in her shaky handwriting, "You're my reason to keep going." In the social worker's car, Malik stared at the city lights sliding by. His world, tiny and fragile, was gone. His mother wasn't home. His home wasn't home anymore. At the foster center, other kids watched as he entered. Some curious, some cruel. He heard one whisper, "That's the boy whose mama stole money." His throat tightened. He wanted to yell that it wasn't true, but the words stayed trapped behind his teeth. When the lights went out that night, he lay awake in the unfamiliar bed. He could still see the red and blue reflections dancing on the wall, and still hear his mother's voice echoing in his head. He remembered how she used to tell him, "Truth always wins, even when it's late." He sat up, eyes burning with tears. "I'll bring her back," he whispered to the empty room. From the small bookshelf across the room, a thick, dusty book caught his eye, its gold letters faint but still visible. Basic Law for Beginners. Malik reached for it with trembling hands. He flipped it open, the pages stiff and yellowed. He didn't understand most of the words, but he traced them slowly with his finger, whispering each one like a promise. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Inside, beneath a dim light, a scared little boy began to read, unknowingly taking the first step toward a fight that would one day shake an entire courtroom. The cafeteria buzzed with laughter, trays clattering, and voices echoing off the dull gray walls. Malik stood quietly in line, clutching his plastic plate. 2 older boys at the table behind him snickered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Hey, that's the thief's kid," one said, his voice dripping with mockery. The other grinned. "Better count your dessert. He might steal it for his mama." A few kids laughed. Malik froze. He didn't look back. He just tightened his grip on the tray until his knuckles turned white. The smell of reheated food suddenly made him sick. He placed his plate down untouched and walked out, ignoring the whispers that followed. In the hallway, the sound of laughter faded into silence. The building felt colder there, the air heavy with loneliness. His caseworker, Mrs. Turner, found him sitting alone on a bench near the office. She was kind, her eyes soft but tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying too many children's pain at once. "Malik," she said gently, "you need to eat, sweetheart." "I'm not hungry," she sighed. "Your mom's hearing is next month. We'll see what happens then, okay? The court will decide." Malik nodded, though he knew what that meant. Adults deciding things while he just waited, powerless. That night, when the center went quiet and the lights dimmed, Malik slipped out of bed. He moved carefully past the other sleeping kids, heart thudding as he reached the small library. The room smelled like dust and paper. A single desk lamp flickered weakly, but it was enough. He climbed onto a chair and reached for the same thick book he'd found before. Basic Law for Beginners. This time he brought more. Old manuals, case digests, anything he could understand. Hour after hour he read, stumbling through strange words, whispering them out loud, trying to make sense of the sentences. Evidence, testimony, cross-examination. He filled an old notebook, writing down everything that sounded important. On the cover, he printed the words carefully in block letters. Mom's case. Weeks passed. Every night he returned, learning, writing, and connecting pieces he barely understood but refused to give up on. One evening, he found a computer left on by a staff member. The screen glowed in the dark. Malik sat before it, searching how trials work and what lawyers do. He found a video, a real courtroom. A woman stood defending an innocent man with confidence and power. The way she spoke, her words, her calm, it felt like magic. He leaned closer, his eyes wide. The lawyer said, "Justice doesn't ask your age. It asks for truth." Malik's chest tightened. His whisper trembled through the empty room. "If nobody fights for her, I will." He didn't hear the footsteps behind him. A soft voice broke the silence. "Malik?" He spun around. Mrs. Turner stood in the doorway, the faint light outlining her tired face. Her eyes fell on the open laptop, the pile of books, and the notebook clutched in his hand. She stepped closer, reading the words written across the cover. Mom's case. Her brow furrowed with concern. "Malik," she said quietly, "what are you planning to do?" The phone crackled as Malik pressed the cold receiver to his ear. The walls around him hummed with noise, guards' footsteps, voices echoing down the long hallway. But all he heard was her voice. "Baby," Angela whispered, her tone shaking. "Promise me you'll be okay." Malik swallowed hard. "I'm fine, Mom. Don't worry about me." She tried to sound strong, but he heard the tremor she couldn't hide. "They say my hearing's next month," she said softly. "My lawyer's doing what he can." There was a long pause. He could hear her breathing, uneven and tired. "Mama?" he said quietly. Then came the sound that broke him, a muffled sob quickly covered. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Malik's eyes burned. He pressed his hand against the wall beside the phone, as if he could reach through it. "Mom, I'll fix everything. I promise." Her voice trembled. "How, baby?" He straightened his back, his small voice steady now. "I'll be your lawyer." On the other end, she laughed weakly, half crying. "You're just a boy, Malik." "Then I'll be a boy who wins," he said. When the line went dead, Malik stood there for a long time, the weight of his promise pressing against his chest. Back at the foster center, Mrs. Turner waited by the door. "You spoke to her?" she asked gently. He nodded. "She didn't sound okay." "She's strong," Mrs. Turner said. "Her public defender will handle things." Malik frowned. "He doesn't care enough. He didn't even ask about the cameras." Mrs. Turner hesitated. "That's complicated, Malik. Let the adults handle it." But Malik had already made up his mind. The next week, while other kids played outside, Malik snuck onto the city bus. The courthouse was just 5 stops away. He sat in the back row of the courtroom, notebook in hand, watching every word, every movement. He studied how lawyers walked, how they spoke, and how they questioned witnesses. He whispered the phrases under his breath, copying them from memory. "Objection, Your Honor. May I approach the bench?" The defense rests. He filled pages and pages with notes, sketches, and ideas, things he barely understood but refused to stop learning. Day after day, he returned. He began to notice a tall man in a dark robe glancing at him now and then. Judge Reynolds. The judge's sharp eyes missed nothing. After one session ended, the courtroom emptied, leaving Malik alone in the back row, still writing in his notebook. Judge Reynolds stepped down from the bench and approached quietly. "You've been here all week. he said, his voice deep but calm. "Do you enjoy watching trials, son?" Malik looked up nervously. "Yes, sir," the judge tilted his head. "Why?" For a moment, Malik said nothing. His fingers tightened around the notebook. Then, softly but firmly, he answered, "Because I'll be in one soon." The judge frowned. "As a witness?" Malik shook his head, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "No, sir. Not as a criminal." Judge Reynolds studied him in silence, curiosity flickering in his eyes. Malik met his gaze, his heart pounding, but his words were clear, full of something far larger than his years. "I'll be there as my mom's lawyer." The courtroom buzzed with murmurs and shuffling feet as Malik sat quietly in the back row, his knees pressed together, notebook open on his lap. He could barely see past the crowd, but he didn't need to. He knew that voice anywhere. Angela stood trembling before the judge, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her orange jumpsuit looked too big for her thin frame. Malik's throat tightened at the sight. She tried to hold her head high, but when the prosecutor began to speak, her shoulders sank. "Your Honor," the man said confidently, pacing before the jury. "The evidence clearly shows that the defendant, Angela Thompson, stole over $3,000 from the restaurant safe. Only she had the key. Only she had access." Each word hit Malik like a hammer. He looked at the table where his mother's lawyer sat, bored, flipping through papers, barely listening. When it was his turn to speak, the man mumbled, "My client maintains her innocence." Then he sat down. That was it. Malik's pen dug into the page as he scribbled furiously. No evidence, no video, no proof. He looked toward the witness stand. Mr. Kane, the restaurant manager, avoided eye contact with everyone. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Every time the security footage was mentioned, his eyes darted toward the floor. Something twisted inside Malik's chest. He didn't understand every rule, every law, but he knew when someone was lying. He flipped to a clean page and wrote, "Missing footage." "Kitchen camera?" The judge called for a recess. Everyone began filing out, talking in low voices. Malik saw the lawyer pick up his briefcase, ready to leave. Desperation burned through the boy's fear. He slipped through the crowd and pressed a folded note into the man's hand. The lawyer frowned, unfolding it. Malik had written in uneven letters, "Ask about the deleted footage from the kitchen camera." The man sighed. "Kid, this isn't how it works," he muttered, and walked away without a second glance. Malik's hands trembled. Around him, the courtroom emptied. He stared at the front, where his mother stood in silence, a guard by her side. She turned slightly, just enough to see him in the back row. For a second, everything else disappeared. The noise, the lights, the people. It was just her and him. Her lips moved silently, but he knew the words. "Don't lose hope." His heart clenched. He nodded, tears burning his eyes. That night, the city glowed under flickering streetlights. Malik sat alone on the bus, his notebook open across his knees. Pages filled with messy notes and questions. Every one of them led to the same thing: the missing footage. The restaurant was only a few blocks from the courthouse. He could still see it clearly in his memory. The back door near the dumpsters, the windows always dark after closing. He looked down at his notebook. The words scrawled across the final page. "Find the truth." The bus hissed to a stop. Malik stepped off into the cold night air. His breath came out in little clouds as he looked up at the darkened building. Inside those walls was the proof his mother needed. He pulled his hood up, clutching the straps of his backpack. "I'll find it," he whispered. "No matter what." And as he crept toward the restaurant's back entrance, the flicker of a security light caught his face. Half shadow, half determination. A scared little boy was about to do something no one else dared. Rain poured in relentless sheets, soaking Malik to the bone. The alley behind the restaurant smelled of wet cardboard and grease. He crouched behind a row of trash bins, his breath fogging in the cold air. Every flash of lightning lit up the cracked bricks and flickering security light above the back door. He waited, counting seconds between thunderclaps, before slipping out of hiding. His sneakers splashed through puddles as he reached the rusted door. To his relief, the latch was loose. He pushed it open slowly, wincing at the faint creak. Inside, the restaurant was dark. The faint hum of refrigerators echoed through the still air. Malik's heart pounded so hard he thought it would give him away. He tiptoed past the kitchen counters, the smell of old fry oil thick in the air. He reached the back office, the manager's small room filled with paper stacks and old computer parts. A faint blue light blinked from a corner desk. Malik's pulse quickened. The computer was still on. He climbed into the chair, water dripping from his hoodie onto the dusty floor. On the screen, a security program blinked. Footage, storage. Access restricted. "Come on," he whispered. He remembered something he'd seen in a movie. Typing admin and 1234. It didn't work. He tried again. Random numbers. Anything. Then, on the fifth try, the program opened. A list of dates filled the screen. Most were grayed out, deleted. Malik clicked one after another until he reached the night of the theft. No footage available. He slumped, about to give up, then noticed a small folder at the bottom of the screen labeled Backup. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were dozens of video clips. He clicked one. The grainy footage showed the empty restaurant kitchen at night. Then, movement, Mr. Kane. Malik leaned closer, eyes wide. The manager walked straight to the register, looked around, then unlocked the drawer and stuffed wads of cash into his jacket. He looked straight into the camera, then reached up and turned it off. Malik gasped, covering his mouth. "It was him," he whispered. "It was him." He fumbled for the flash drive Mrs. Turner had given him to store schoolwork. Plugging it in, he copied the video. The progress bar crawled painfully slow. 10%, 25%, 50%, as thunder boomed outside. Finally, 100%. He yanked the drive out and stuffed it deep in his backpack. His heart was racing. This was it. Proof. His mom was innocent. He turned to leave and froze. A beam of light flashed across the kitchen. "Hey, who's in here?" It was the janitor, an older man with a mop in one hand and a phone in the other. Malik ran. "Stop!" the man shouted. "I'm calling the police!" Malik darted through the back hallway, sneakers slipping on the wet floor. He reached the exit, but red and blue lights already flickered through the rain. Within minutes, an officer grabbed his arm. "Hey, kid, what are you doing here?" Malik tried to explain, voice shaking. "Please, you don't understand. I found something. Me mom, she's innocent." But the officers didn't listen. They searched his backpack, pulling out the dripping notebooks and flash drive. One of them frowned. "We'll take that as evidence." "No," Malik cried. "That's proof. Please, don't." They led him to the patrol car. As the door slammed shut, he pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Watching the restaurant fade in the rain, he'd found the truth. But now, it was gone, and his only proof sat locked inside a police evidence bag. The courtroom felt colder than the rain that had soaked Malik the night before. He stood before the bench, his small hands gripping the wooden rail so tightly his knuckles turned white. His clothes were wrinkled from the holding cell, his eyes red from no sleep. Across from him, two police officers whispered to each other, papers in hand. Judge Reynolds adjusted his glasses and looked down from the bench. His deep voice filled the silent room. "Malik Johnson," he began, "you're accused of breaking and entering private property. Do you understand the charges?" Malik swallowed hard. His voice trembled, but he lifted his chin. "Yes, sir, but I wasn't stealing anything. I was finding proof to free my mom." The words hung in the air. A quiet murmur rippled through the courtroom. Judge Reynolds leaned forward, brow furrowed. "Proof? What kind of proof?" Malik hesitated, then took a shaky breath. "They said my mom stole money from the restaurant." But she didn't. I found a video that shows who really did it. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. One of them muttered, "Your Honor, with all due respect, the boy was trespassing." Before the judge could respond, the courtroom door opened. Mrs. Turner hurried in, out of breath, holding a file. "Your Honor, please," she said. "The boy's telling the truth. He's been studying his mother's case for weeks. He found something we all missed." Judge Reynolds tapped his pen against the desk. "Is that so?" "Yes, Your Honor," Mrs. Turner said softly. "He said there was a flash drive in his backpack. The police took it as evidence." Reynolds nodded to a bailiff. "Retrieve the backpack." Minutes later, the small black bag was placed on the table. Malik's heart hammered as they unzipped it, pulling out the damp flash drive. The judge nodded to the clerk. "Let's see what's on it." The lights dimmed as the video flickered onto the courtroom screen. At first, static. Then, the restaurant kitchen appeared. The same night. The same empty counter. And then, Mr. Kane stepped into frame. He looked around, opened the register, and stuffed cash into his coat. The entire courtroom gasped. Mrs. Turner covered her mouth. The prosecutor went pale. Judge Reynolds leaned closer, his face tightening with disbelief. When the video ended, silence filled the room. The only sound was the faint hum of the projector. Judge Reynolds looked down at Malik, his expression softening. "Son, how did you find this?" Malik's voice cracked, but he spoke with quiet strength. "I just looked where nobody else did." A small smile tugged at the corner of the judge's lips. "You risked everything for your mother." "She didn't do anything wrong," Malik said, eyes shining. "Someone had to prove it." Reynolds sat back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "Officer," he said, turning to the police, "make sure this footage is sent immediately to the district attorney's office. And as for this boy," he paused. The courtroom held its breath. "He won't be facing any charges today." Mrs. Turner sighed with relief, tears welling in her eyes. Malik looked down, overwhelmed, whispering, "Thank you, sir." But Judge Reynolds wasn't finished. He leaned forward again, voice steady, filled with something deeper than authority. Respect. "You've done something extraordinary, son," he said softly. "But the fight isn't over yet. This video changes everything. But justice still needs to be served properly." Malik met his gaze, hope flickering like sunlight through storm clouds. For the first time in weeks, he wasn't just a scared boy. He was a fighter, standing before the very man who could help him bring his mother home. Flashbulbs exploded, like tiny lightning bolts as Malik walked into the courthouse hand in hand with his mother. Reporters shouted over one another, microphones thrust forward. "Is it true you cracked the case yourself?" "How does it feel to free your mom?" Malik kept his head down, his small hand gripping Angela's tightly. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Cameras lined the walls. The words, "boy lawyer," whispered from every corner. Angela's new attorney adjusted his tie, but all eyes drifted toward Malik as he took his seat beside her. He looked nervous, too small for the giant oak desk, but when Judge Reynolds entered, he sat up straight. "This court will now hear the case of the state versus Angela Thompson," Reynolds announced, his tone measured. "And I understand we have a very special witness today." All eyes turned to Malik. His mother squeezed his hand. "You don't have to," she whispered. "Yes, I do," he replied softly. When the judge nodded for him to speak, Malik stood. His voice trembled at first. "Your Honor, I didn't mean to break any laws. I just wanted to find the truth." He looked at the crowd, at the officers, at the prosecutor, at the man in the gray suit sitting stiffly in the corner. "Mr. Kane." "I watched the cameras," Malik continued, clutching the edge of the table. "I saw him, Mr. Kane, taking the money. My mom didn't steal anything. She was working 2 jobs just to feed me. She would never—" His voice cracked. She would never do what they said. A hush swept the room. The prosecutor shifted uncomfortably. Judge Reynolds gestured to the bailiff. "Play the evidence." The screen lit up again with the same footage. The stolen money, the guilty glance, the unmistakable face. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Mr. Kane's eyes darted around. That's old footage. It's been edited," he shouted. But no one believed him. Two officers stepped forward. "Mr. Kane," the judge said sternly, "you're under arrest for theft and perjury." The clatter of handcuffs filled the courtroom. Angela covered her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Malik turned to her, heart pounding. "It's over, Mom," he whispered. "You're free." She pulled him into her arms, sobbing into his shoulder. "You saved me, baby. You really did." The judge's voice cut through the noise. "Angela Thompson," he declared. "This court finds you not guilty of all charges. You are free to go." The room erupted in applause. Reporters shouted questions. Camera shutters snapped, and Malik stood frozen, overwhelmed, his mother's arms still wrapped around him. When they finally stepped outside, the afternoon sun felt brighter than ever. The crowd surged forward, microphones everywhere. "Malik! Malik! How did you learn all this? Are you going to be a lawyer when you grow up? What made you believe your mom was innocent?" Malik looked up at the reporters, blinking against the flash of cameras. He didn't seem like the scared boy who once hid behind cracked windows or library shelves. He smiled, a small, steady smile, and said softly, "Because love teaches faster than law." The crowd went silent for a heartbeat. Then the cameras clicked again, faster this time, capturing the moment the boy who fought for his mother walked away. Not just a son anymore, but a symbol of faith that refused to quit. Morning sunlight poured through the window of the same old apartment where everything had fallen apart weeks ago. Only now, the light felt different. Warm. Alive. Malik sat cross-legged on the couch beside his mother, a plate of pancakes between them, the news playing softly in the background. On the screen, the anchor's voice said, "The story of 10-year-old Malik Thompson, the boy who freed his mother, continues to inspire millions worldwide." Video clips flashed. Malik in court, Judge Reynolds shaking his hand. Angela's tearful embrace. Angela laughed through her tears. "Can you believe that's us?" Malik grinned shyly, cutting into his pancake. "It's kind of weird seeing my face on TV." "Baby," Angela said, brushing his curls back, "you didn't just save me. You saved Faith." Outside, the city seemed brighter too. Neighbors waved from the street below. The same ones who once whispered now cheered. Letters from strangers stacked up by the door, some with scholarships, some with notes that simply read, "You gave us hope." Angela's phone buzzed. Her eyes widened. "They offered me my job back," she whispered. And, "The city's issuing a formal apology." Malik jumped from the couch, hugging her tightly. "Told you the truth always wins, even when it's late," he said, echoing her old words. A knock came at the door. Mrs. Turner stood there, smiling proudly. "You've got a visitor," she said. Behind her was Judge Reynolds, holding an envelope. "Malik," the judge said warmly, "I think you might be interested in this." He handed him the envelope. Inside, a letter stamped with the state seal. Mentorship program for future attorneys. Malik's eyes went wide. "For me?" Reynolds nodded. "You've already proven what most lawyers spend years trying to learn, that justice begins with heart." Angela wiped her eyes again. "You hear that, counselor?" she teased. That evening, Malik sat at the small kitchen table, the same one where his mom once cried alone. Now, it was covered in open law books and a shining new laptop. Beside him sat an attorney volunteering to mentor him, guiding his small finger along the lines of real legal text. "Start here," the lawyer said gently. "You'll need this someday." Malik nodded, his focus unwavering. The pages glowed under the warm light, his shadow stretching across them like a promise. Angela watched from the doorway, her heart full. The boy who once whispered in the dark was now chasing the light, and the world was watching. Narration softened as the screen faded to a future moment. Years later, a courtroom, silent and dignified. Malik stood tall at the defense table, wearing his first suit, his voice steady, his eyes fearless. From the bench, Judge Reynolds smiled, older now, but proud beyond words. "The court recognizes attorney Malik Thompson," he said. Malik bowed his head slightly, the same quiet determination in his eyes that once belonged to a 10-year-old boy reading by lamplight. And as the gavel struck, the narrator's voice rose with the swell of soft music. Sometimes justice doesn't start in a courtroom. It starts in a child's heart that refuses to give up. A final pause, then the message that tied it all together. If this story moved you, share it to remind others that courage and love can change any verdict.